I'm Salty Air. Are you ready to bring the beach to your bead mat? Hey, I'm Dina. I'm a pharmacist and a jewelry designer on a Southern Shores adventure. In this series, I'm creating 10 projects using every bead and finding from the June 2025 Jesse James Beads Magical Mystery Box. Today we're working with the Feeling Salty Turquoise heishi strand to create a matching necklace and a bracelet. Stay tuned for a fun coastal duo. Alright, so for this portion of the box, the Feeling Salty strand, I've already taken it off of the packaging and everything. And what I ended up doing first off was I split it up into 2/3. Or to three piles of the same amount of beads. I think I said that right. So basically I did 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, so on and so forth until I had 3 piles. I put 2/3 of that pile, so 2 of those piles together, which is over here, and I have 1/3 over here. It ended up being that I had 2 beads left over, so I have 1 extra bead over here, 1 extra bead over here. In my strand, I ended up having a total of 77 of these beads, which kind of look like magnesite to me, which is a very good, kind of like an imitation turquoise. It still gets you that really good turquoise color, but it's a lot less in cost. So, but I have a total of 51 over here, and then 26 over here. So the 51 we'll end up using in the necklace, and then we'll make a matching bracelet or a similar bracelet with the remaining beads over here. So using basically the same type of step. So we're going to put the bracelet down off to the side. We're just going to be working on the necklace at the moment. I do have a extra strand of the same color of wire because we're going to basically be floating these beads, and we're going to have like little sections. So we're going to be using some crimp tubes to mark off those sections, so that way they can kind of float around and move and be moving on the necklace and everything. So we're going to need one of those, so I have that sitting off to the side too because I don't need that just yet. And then I've left my wire on the spool. That way I can just bead and put everything on the spool right away, and then I can crimp this side, and then I can measure out at the end exactly how long I want to make the necklace, which is probably going to be about a 15-inch because I want to do a choker. And so it's either going to be a 14 or a 15-inch. And then we can cut off the spool after that. So to start off, we're going to need a crimp tube on one end. So go ahead and just put your crimp tube on, just to make sure that you have it on there. And then all you're going to do is you're going to count out 17, which I should have done this beforehand, but 17 of your heishi beads. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 15, and 17. Because if you use 51 of them, then you can do 17 3 times, and that way you have 3 sections of your necklace. So we're going to start off with a heishi and just do a seed bead afterwards, and so on and so forth. So once you get these 34 beads on, the 17, or I guess it would be 33, because you're not going to put a seed bead after the last heishi. You're going to start with a heishi and end with a heishi, so to be 33 beads. So once you get these guys on, we're not going to crimp just yet, but we're going to put the crimp tube on, so that way we can come back after we have the 2 ends of the necklace completed. We can come back and kind of, I'm pretty much going to eyeball it and figure out where to put the crimp tubes, you know, where to crimp them down to where you have movement in your necklace. But it's going to be about the same distance on either side. So that is my plan, at least. So hopefully this works out, because I have not done it yet. So these designs are kind of fun because they're kind of designs on the fly. I get an idea of what I want to do, and then I sit down and try to do it. If it works, great. If it doesn't, then whoops, then we'll figure it out after that. And I just threw that at myself. So luckily I didn't lose the heishi. I lost the seed bead and went to the floor. But the heishi is right here. I'll pick up the seed bead eventually. Either with a vacuum or I'll step on it or something. And I'll be like, oh, that felt like a seed bead. Okay, so we're starting with a heishi bead and we're ending with a heishi bead. So you have your crimp tube first, and then you have your 17 heishis with 16 of your seed beads in between. So after that, you just add your second crimp tube, and then you start your second section and do the same thing. So go ahead and string on the rest of your heishi beads, seed beads, and your crimp tubes. Just remember to make sure that we end with the crimp tube over here, so that way we can crimp off this side. So I'll meet you back in a second when I get that done, and we'll crimp the one side of our necklace. Alright, so I've got all of my beads strung on already. So this is what it's going to look similar to. And then there's our crimp tubes there, and I got another one there, and then on the either end as well. So let's go ahead and crimp this first side, and then we'll measure it out and see how much that we need to cut off to get about a 15-inch necklace or so. I said 14-inch at the very beginning. I'm like, that's kind of a small necklace, but you could do 14 as well. Just whatever you're more comfortable with. So I just rounded out the wire and put it right back into that crimp tube that was down at the end. And I'm going to come back and I'm going to add some jump rings here at the end. So I'm going to go ahead and put this crimp tube somewhat close down to the end and just make a little small loop. Something like that. And of course it's the beige color, or what color do they call this? They call it bone color, yeah. Bone color, so you can barely see it on the white mat. But there you go, so there's bone color. Alright, so take your pliers, center your crimp tube in the middle of the pliers. Once you got that, you squish down. Ends up making a little squared of crimp right there. And you turn it 90 degrees, put it back in your pliers, make sure you're in the center and squish down. And then you just squish and turn ever so slightly. Just making sure you're in the middle of your pliers each time. And you'll know when you're not in the middle. Sometimes you'll get like a different feel to the crimp all of a sudden. Like the crimp tube it'll feel different. And you're like, oh, nope, I was not in the middle that time. And then eventually, after a couple of crimps, you'll have a nice little ball of crimp. Just like that. So now that is crimped off, and we need to find our cutters, and then we're going to cut off that little excess that is right there at the end. Just like that. And then I'll throw that away. And I forgot to do a tug test first. I always like to try to do a tug test, so I'm actually holding on to the crimp tube right now. Or the ball of crimp, and making sure it's not there. It's not moving. Okay, so we're good. So now we're going to move everything back down. And now we need to measure and make sure that we are going to have a necklace that is about 15 inches. So I'm going to get out one of my measuring tapes. And then I'm going to start right here until, move on down until I get to where I know is the 15 inches, or 14 inches. See, this clasp is kind of small. Let's do 14.5 inches. And then we need to leave a little bit of room for the other crimp also. So it's going to be approximate. It may not be exactly a choker for some people. It may end up being a little bit smaller than a choker for some people. It may be too big for a choker for some people. Okay, beads. This is where I want to be. And I just let go of it. Oh. Let's try that again. Sorry, I'm a little off camera, but I'm moving everything around so I know where I'm at. Okay, so that's about 14.5 inches right there. Then we're going to leave ourselves a little bit of room so I can crimp and cut that off the spool. And I'm going to go ahead and try to leave my thumb right there. Put that back up. And then bring our crimp tube from this side of the necklace on up here. So that way I know this is around about the area that I want to have the end of my necklace. So go ahead and do the same thing. Wrap your wire back around. Just make sure it is not crossed over inside the crimp tube. That will help also. Try to make your loop about the same size on either side. That is so not my magical crimpers. Pick up your magical crimpers, not your cutters, and crimp down this one. Make yourself a nice little ball of crimp again. And if I ended up making everything the right length that I wanted, then we'll be in a good shape. Now, what happens if you make your necklace and it's actually too short? You can just simply add an extender on it. I like to use lobster clasps on a lot of my necklaces just because it's easy. And a lot of necklaces have that outside of just, you know, normal DIY jewelry and things like that. Normal jewelry. I shouldn't say normal jewelry. Outside of DIY jewelry. That a lot of them have lobster clasp on it as well. So it's one of those things that I just prefer to use. And then you can always add an extender chain if it's too long. So that is what our necklace looks like at the moment. So let me get the cutters out of the way so I don't accidentally grab those again. And now we're set up to where we're going to try to kind of just eyeball it and figure out, okay, so where do we want our other crimp tube to be at and for it to be crimped. So I'm moving, like I said, I'm just doing this on the fly, so we're going to figure this out ourselves here. So I'm moving my beads just to the ends, and I'm trying to keep these beads here in the center. And then I am going to leave probably, let's see, that's kind of close to about the center. So I'm going to leave, what would be an easy way of measuring this? Finger width. Because if I hold my index finger up right over here, then that's just about a finger width. So maybe we can do that. So then this one would go over here a little bit. So this one would be a little bit tighter, and this one is obviously going to have a lot more to move around and everything, the two edges. But let's do that. Let's see if this works. Whoops. So we're going to get our extra set of wire, and I'm putting my thumb right exactly where I want to have my crimp tube at. And I'm just adding that extra wire to the crimp tube, keeping my thumb there, but then moving the wire to where it can sit and have extra bulk. So it makes it easier to be able to crimp down. And hopefully I don't drop it. Okay, good. We're so good so far. And then we're going to crimp down on this guy. And once you get this going, then you can cut off the excess wire on either side of this crimp tube. There we go. Tug test it. We're good. I guess I do need my wire cutters. Just make sure you're cutting off the correct wire. Do not try to cut off the wrong wire, because then you'll have to start over. And well, somewhere around here. There we go. guy off. Okay, so now we said about a finger width. I'm going to need that. Hold on, you go back there. So about a finger width away from the beads, we're going to put the other crimp tube. So I'm getting all my beads all situated again. Okay, these go back down to the center. Put the crimp tube off to the side a little bit. This was about a finger width away. So we're going to move them over just a little bit. Okay, pausing to make sure I was still in frame at least somewhere. Okay. So finger width, finger width. So then we'll move this guy down a little bit. Not much, just a little. And then now I need to somehow pick this up with my left hand. Okay. Ah, I moved it. Okay. I have to do that again. Okay. Let's see. Finger width, finger width, down some. There we go. Okay, how to pick this up. Okay, we'll do it like that. Like that. We're getting it. Alright. Then we're going to put this in like that. Make sure it's not crossing over. And then we're going to crimp down on this one. Making sure that it's in the center. And the wires are not crossed. And that was a wonky crimp. That's the other good thing about these crimps, that if you get kind of a wonky one, you can most of the time fix it. Just keep working with it. Just get it back into the center of the crimp tube, or the crimper. Get the crimp tube back in the center of the crimper, and then most of the time you can work out whatever wonkiness that you had on that. Most of the time. Sometimes it still doesn't work. And if that happens, it happens. It's handmade. So, okay, see? I pretty much got that fixed. There's just a little bit of a little wiggle right there on that side of it. But it still looks pretty good. Alright, so cut off your excess on this side. And then I got a divot there in my pliers. That's why I keep missing it. Come on. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay, nothing's moving. I was pulling on the wrong one anyway. Okay, now nothing's moving. Hopefully it's not going to move on the big one. Okay, so that is all cut off. So then that is the first part of the necklace. Moving the mat around like crazy. Okay, so now we're going to finish this off real quick, and then now you have movement down here in that section. You got movement up here at that section. So it'll be kind of neat. It'll be different. Kind of a different plan for myself. Something that I usually don't do very often is something like this. Let me get my pliers so I can open my jump rings. Move these guys out of the way. Let's see. I'm using that for the bracelet, so I need 2 of these. And then 2 of those. Or 1 of those. Alright. So open up your small jump ring. We're going to put that on one side of the necklace. I'm going to go ahead and just put the lobster clasp on over here. I did not test this lobster. Let me test it first before I go too far. And drop everything because I'm trying to do this quickly. Okay, good. Yep, my lobster works. Pick up your jump ring. put that on the necklace and through your end of your lobster. Then close that up. And then open up your next jump ring. Other side of the necklace. Go ahead and add your larger jump ring and drop everything again. Add your larger jump ring on your necklace, close that up. Alright, now you have a floater necklace complete. So, I've already got everything all strung on, and I ended up just doing 2 sections of 13. So there's my middle crimp tube, and then I've got a crimp tube on either end, and I've already put the crimp tube on the right hand side right here. I also went ahead and added the clasp right away because I'm going to be using this little itty bitty small tiny little magnetic clasp. That is where this extra piece of chain came from in the first clip, is that I'm going to use this chain as a security chain basically. I think I'm going to need 2 inches. I may end up having to cut off a little bit more than that, but I figured, okay, I'll start with 2 inches and go from there. Because if anything, I can always use this as an extender chain on my necklace if I wanted to do that, because it is small enough to be able to go through that lobster clasp. So we'll put that back off to the side for a second. So now I'm to the point where I need to figure out how much to cut off in order to make my bracelet about 7.5 inches. So I've got my bracelet mandrel out. I'm going to put this right about at 7.5 inches. And then I'm using this. Well, at least this is not as fumbly as I was practicing, so that's good. So this is about where we're going to need to be in order to be at 7.5 inches as far as the amount of wire that you're going to need. So now you need to leave yourself a little bit extra room to be able to cut off and to crimp. So we'll cut off right in here, just like this, just like normal. And then move the mandrel back out of the way for a second. We're probably going to need that, so I need to keep it handy, get everything else out of the way, because this is where I always get nervous and not know exactly where I need to crimp off. Alright, so let's measure one more time, because here I am, I'm getting nervous about it. Alright, so we're sitting at, I want a 7.5 inch bracelet. So we're sitting at right about there. Make sure it's tight enough, but not so tight that you're not going to have room. I'm going to need to leave just a little bit of room for that jump ring. So I'm going to put my crimp tube right about there. There again, I'm kind of eyeballing it. We'll put it right there. Okay, just eyeballing it. Hopefully this works out. If it doesn't, you can always redo it. If you're not happy with what you got. And I did not leave myself enough room to be able to give myself that room that I needed for the loop, comfortably at least. So I might have a little bit of issues, but we'll get through it. I just don't want to move that crimp tube around. Trying just to move the wire. There again, if it ends up being just a little too big, somebody will like it. Okay, trying to get my loops about the same length, about the same size again. So they're close. You can't see that. They're close in size. So now we're going to crimp down this side, and pray that I still have a bracelet that's not going to be too large, because it looks large right now. But it's probably fine because I'm nervous about it, and I want it to look right. So just finishing up this crimp. There we go. Tug test it. Not moving. Perfect. Get the cutters out. Now, bracelet wise, this is going to be a little bit easier to figure out where to put that middle crimp. You just push all your beads off to the side and then you can just kind of eyeball it. So, no rhyme or reason, just kind of eyeballing it, saying, okay, yeah, that looks to be right about in the center. So I'm going to put my nail right there so I can pick up my wire. And that's okay if the crimp tube goes flying off a little bit, because you know your nail was sitting right where you want to have your crimp tube at. So go ahead and get it all lined up. And then squish down and do your crimp here. And this one's kind of wonky again, but it's not as wonky as the other one, the one in the necklace. One in the necklace had a nice little divot in it, but that's fine. I am not upset with that, because I'm still practicing on how to use these little guys. So yeah, it looks a little wonky again, but it's okay. It will suffice and it'll be just fine. So now we're going to cut off these excess amounts. And then always keep your excess whenever you cut off like this, because you'll never know when you'll have another project that's going to be similar to this and you're going to need some more of those pieces. So always keep those like in a separate bag or something like that. Alright, so now I need to figure out where my last jump ring is at. And then open this guy up. And then I'm going to go ahead and put the security chain, which is just a piece of chain that I got in a kit sometime or another, and it's in my stash. And we're going to put the other side of the jump ring, or the magnetic clasp on. And I'm putting that security chain on there because I did use this clasp, or a similar clasp, in another project that I don't have a tutorial for. This is before I started making tutorials. And I sold that bracelet to a nice lady who was able to wear it the next day to an event that she went to. And unfortunately, it fell off and she lost it. And I feel really bad for that. So now, whenever I use these little itty bitty small guys, I put a little security chain on it. So that way, hopefully, if it falls off, or starts to fall off, you'll notice it because it'll be just hanging at the bottom of your hand rather than on the ground somewhere. So of course this is stainless steel, this is all balled up. I may end up changing that chain, may not end up using that same chain. Okay, so far we're good. Let's see how we got to the sizing. Okay, it's a little long, or a little large, but it still works. It still looks okay. And then you've got your two sections of your beads just flopping around. You can always add more sections if you wanted to, like put one that's a little bit closer to the center if you wanted to do that. You know, whatever you feel like doing. I think I am going to change that chain out and not use the stainless steel chain because it's just going to clump up like that. But that is our bracelet. And then when I get my necklace back out here again, we will have a completed set of a necklace and a somewhat matching bracelet. So now we have a completed project number 2. If you enjoyed this video and are looking for more inspiration, I have a playlist in the description below, so click on that and get yourself inspired. Also, don't forget to hit that like button, the subscribe button, as well as the notification bell, so that way you'll get a notification every time I come out with a new video. Thanks again everyone for watching. I'll see y'all in the next one. Bye now.